It's time for basketball, and Uber Eats is dropping deals on game day favorites to keep you locked in on the action. Like when you're craving a buzzer beater, but also buffalo wings. Or when an upset makes you want to ugly cry into a pizza. And right now, Uber Eats has game day deals from Burger King, Buffalo Wild Wings, KFC, and hundreds more local favorites. So you can keep your eyes on the ball and your hands on a burger. Order now, only on Uber Eats. Product availability varies by region. See app for details.
Your data is like gold to hackers, and they'll sell it to the highest bidder. Are you protected? McAfee helps shield you, blocking suspicious texts, malicious emails, and fraudulent websites. McAfee Secure VPN lets you browse safely, and its AI-powered text scam detector spots threats instantly. You'll also get up to $2 million of award-winning antivirus and identity theft protection, all for just $39.99 for your first year. Visit McAfee.com. Cancel anytime. Terms apply.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
Hello and welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast, and we are recording on Sunday the 16th of March, the day after Forest went away to Portman Road, scored 4 goals and cemented their spot in 3rd position in the Premier League. The upshot of that is also that Ipswich look pretty much doomed as Wolves won away, but you know what, that's not our problem. My name is Rich Ferraro and I'm joined by George Edwards, who was our man at the ground. So George, did you have a nice day out yesterday?
Yes, it was wonderful from back to front, starting at the Station Inn. I'm sure if any Forest fans are listening who went will know that I think that's one of the best away bars I've ever been to, playing Forest songs in the beer garden. Apart from the £8 pints, it was a great start to the day. And then, the game was perfect. It was good to get an away win. I think it's our first Premier League win since Wolves, which seems like so long ago. We've had, obviously, Bournemouth, Fulham and Newcastle, but it's nice to put them in the rearview mirror and look behind them now. So I think the attacking dominance on display was brilliant. You know, Forest's success this season has been built on how solid we've been defensively, but just have a performance where we look like we're going to score every time we go forward. And we did to Ipswich what many teams did to us in our first season back. We bided our time, we waited for them to make defensive mistakes, and then we capitalised. So many teams did that to us, and we did that to them so well. And I think there's a real sort of realisation and belief that Forest might actually get Champions League football, and the away ends are just feeling with so much positive energy at the minute. I just love being there. So another brilliant away day to add to many that we've had this season.
If you needed something to kind of give you a bit of confidence, then maybe it was the team selection, which was the same as against Manchester City. So we had Sells in goal, we had Ola Aina and Nico Williams at fullback, and Milenković and Murillo at centre-back. In the middle of the park, we once again had the sort of 4-4-2 kind of arrangement with Callum Hudson-Odoi on the left wing, Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs-White in the middle, and Nico Dominguez playing as a sort of centre/right midfielder, offering a bit of cover, as Anthony Elanga was playing in more of a roaming role around Chris Wood. So, you know what, I was a little bit surprised that the team selection stayed the same, because I wondered if Yates might come in for this one. But on the other hand, once I thought about it, I thought, there's a lot of logic, because Ipswich do try and overload on their left-hand side with Leif Davis going forward, and I think Dominguez playing that right-sided midfield role was once again to provide Aina with some support so that he didn't get overloaded. What did you think?
Yeah, I was happy when the lineup came in. I think consistency is something that Nuno craves in his managerial career. He likes to have a small squad and he likes to make as little changes as possible. So while the boys are playing as well as they are, there's no, the one place that's been chopped and changed a lot has been that midfield option. But Dominguez, especially against Man City, did something that I couldn't see any of the other candidates in Yates, Sangare, Danilo. I couldn't see any of them doing, and he did it so well. He played 3 positions throughout the game, and he was everywhere. So I think dropping him would have been extremely harsh. And to have somebody, like you mentioned, in the form of Ryan Yates sitting on the bench to come on, and as he did, we'll mention, comes on, gets a pre-assist, if you like, and really drives Forest forward. It's a really positive asset. I mean, how we set up, as you mentioned, I was a bit sceptical about it, because I thought, yes, it worked against City, but let's go and take the game to Ipswich. You know, we're expected to dominate. I like Gibbs-White in the middle. You know, I know Elanga likes to roam and Gibbs-White does well a bit deeper, but I was thinking the man we want to give creative freedom to in the middle is Gibbs-White. And that's why I was a bit sceptical about it. But I think Nuno mentioned in the post-match that the first 15, 20 minutes were about just getting, you know, a foothold in the match, because Ipswich do like to attack quick. So I think that was evident, actually, hearing that and thinking about what I saw. It was very clear that Forest had a plan to just get a foothold in the game and then wait by their time until the chances came, and ultimately they did.
Yeah, absolutely. And Anthony Elanga also mentioned in the post-match interviews, like, first 15 minutes was going to be really, really important. Elanga specifically mentioned that in their preparation for the game, they'd said that we need to keep Ipswich quiet in that time, because that's when they score most of their goals. And Forest did it really effectively. I think Ipswich probably were just about shading things in terms of kind of energy and, I suppose, momentum in those first 15 minutes. But having said that, the only real chance that came in those first 15 minutes was from a corner where Amari Hutchinson did have a chance to have a shot from distance. It was 20 yards out. He had too much space. And to be honest, I think that's exactly the kind of thing whereby you sort the men from the boys at Premier League level. If you're going to survive at Premier League level, you're at least hitting the target and making the keeper work. And Hutchinson just hit it pretty tamely over the middle of the goal above the bar.
Yeah, no, not a great effort from them. And Forest are happy to give up their opportunities because they're pretty confident that they can get bodies in the way if it's on target. And if it's farther out enough, then Sales can make a save if it's on target as well. So Forest often, you saw Man City, they conceded chances in a similar vein, but they didn't really concede any big chances in the box. So Forest were reasonably comfortable. As you mentioned, they weren't brilliant to start the game off with, but that doesn't faze them. You know, Forest aren't a team that have to have the ball, that have to come out of the traps. They're happy to wait and pick their moments and pick their moments to go forward, and that's exactly what they did. So I don't think anybody really in the away end felt any trepidation with the fact that Ipswich started so well, because it's a big game for them. They've not won, I think, since Chelsea last year, the only Premier League team not to win. So they're going to be feisty. They're going to want to come out and set a statement. So Forest were just happy to wait for what came.
Yeah, and another moment which kind of typified what happens when you are maybe a bit overwhelmed and in the bottom, in poor form and at the bottom of the table, is the way they gave away a corner when the ball was played through the channels. Ola Aina was running after it, and Alex Palmer came out and hit it straight against Jens Kajusté to go out for a corner. And from that corner, that's how Forest made the breakthrough, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it's a brilliant bit of pace from Ola Aina, and he comes, I think, his third favourite, certainly for the ball, and he somehow manages to make himself an impact and make the keeper play the ball. And he's actually impressed me, Palmer, since he's came in. I think pre-match I was in the pub talking to some Ipswich fans about Muric, because we've obviously both had that horrible experience, and I think they're very glad that Palmer's in there. So, a little mix up there, but. Yeah, Forest obviously taking advantage of that nice corner that's recycled to Hudson-Odoi. Brilliant ball in from Hudson-Odoi on the edge of the box, left side. And then Dominguez, he does it quite often from set pieces. He hangs back to the back post. He's not the tallest of players, but he's got a brilliant sort of head on him, if you like, to get the power behind it back into the box. And yeah, he does so well. I didn't realise, obviously, until the replay that it deflected to the path of Milenković, but then it's like a striker into it. Milenković knees it down, hammers it into the roof of the net. Fantastic finish. I'm so happy for him as well, because as I've mentioned on this pod a lot, I think until maybe the last month when Sells has maybe overtaken him, I think he's been by far our best player, certainly the most transformative player to where we are now. And for him to be getting that accolades, obviously assist later on in the game as well, is really strong. And it shows that we can score goals from all over the pitch. There was a concern earlier on in the season that Chris Wood, what we would do without his goals. But I think we've really answered those questions over the past few weeks.
Yeah, and Woody had a sort of a half chance where it's across from Morgan on the right hand side, and Woody ghosted between his centre halves, but didn't quite get enough purchase on the header. So it just goes to show that even though he's got the best conversion rate of any striker in the Premier League, you can't always rely upon that. And Milenković, he took it like a striker. What I particularly appreciated, as you mentioned, Delap got a half header to it in the box, which meant that it kind of hit Milenković at thigh height, but to bring it down on his thigh and on his left thigh, and then hit it on the volley with his right foot, all in one movement. It was just really nicely taken. And one thing that the good lady Wifer indoors did comment when we were watching it back on Match of the Day this morning, was also that you can see in how much the other players really respect Milenković from the way they celebrated. There's no big celebration from him. He turned away, raised his arms, but the way the other players went around him, it was as if, like, this is our guy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's just the aura that he has in the team, isn't he? He's Mr. Reliable, he's Mr. Consistent, doesn't do anything particularly outstanding or eye-catching like Murillo might do, but you can count on him 9 times out of 10 to sweep up defensively. When Murillo goes and steps out, he's always there. And then when we need him most in the box, some crucial goals this season. You think about that header at Man United, the header against Aston Villa to get us back into the game. So some really crucial goals along with his defensive work as well. So I think he's been such a revelation for £15 million as well. And, he commands the respect, as you mentioned, of everybody in the team. And he really is, I think, has been the final piece of the jigsaw this season.
Well, apparently it was £11 million. It was like once you convert it from euros and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I defy anyone to tell me that isn't the signing of the season. He's just been the best signing in the Premier League. And I say I cannot think of anyone better. Yes, I'm looking at it from a biased perspective. I genuinely can't.
And he must be in for the team of the season. I know, obviously, we're talking from a biased standpoint, but Forest have had some bad days like Bournemouth, like Newcastle, that make their goals conceded not look great. But if you take them on a general, they've got one of the best defences. I think, is it still third best in the league? So Milenković has to be there to transform us from being one of the most woeful, pathetic defences ever to the third in the league. He has to be in that conversation with, I don't know, your Van Dijks, your Salibas, Gabriels. He's got to be in there, surely.
I think there's a good case to be said that all of Forest's current back four plus Sells have got a good case to be in the Premier League team of the season. And I mean, what I would say is that obviously Ola Aina had a slightly leggy spell, lost form, but he's back on it now. Yeah. And Nico Williams was obviously made left back his own, despite the fact we signed him as a right wing back, in fact. And I would also throw in there, I've been saying for the most of the season so far, Anthony Robinson's probably the best left back in the Premier League. I'd say that Milos Kerkez at Bournemouth would run him close, but I think Nico's probably running both of those close as well.
And finally on Nico, I think I saw something on Instagram. It was sort of the players' points per game, so the most points we've accumulated with players on the pitch. And Murillo, I think, had one of the lowest, but that's because he plays the most. But the last slide was Alex Moreno, and he had about half a decimal place less than everybody in the squad. And that's not to slate Alex Moreno, but that shows that he was brought in as far as sort of Premier left back for the season. How well Nico's done to come in to overtake that and to really excel the team, if you like, because, he's kept Salah quiet, he's kept Doku quiet, as Aina did. Doku kept him quiet, went over to Nico and couldn't get a sniff either. So I think fans were worried defensively about him, but that's something he really has improved. And it reminds me a bit of Matty Cash, if you think back to the Championship. Everybody was a bit unsure about his defensive work, and that under Sabri in that season, he really did excel. So it's a bit of player management from the manager that's really sort of improved Nico's game. And I think he must be the most expensive in that back four, but he's really performing that well.
You know what? He is, isn't he? He's 15 or 17 million. So yeah, he costs more. We signed him for his potential, and he's really realising that. And actually, I really like the Matty Cash analogy, because Matty Cash obviously converted to fullback and having been a winger, and the thing that Forest really had to work on in that season was his positioning, and Nico's positioning is the thing that I think he's massively improved upon. And just like Matty Cash benefited from having the veteran Michael Dawson next to him, I think that Nico has benefited massively from having the Milenković, Murillo, Sells axis alongside him, and they've been able to give him that kind of bit of guidance that all fullbacks need.
Yeah, and Cash and Williams both weird numbers for right backs, don't they? 7 and 11 for us.
Yeah, I do have an issue, just like Callum Hudson-Odoi has, about Nico continuing to wear number 7, but that's a separate discussion for another day, I think. Let's go back to the issues on the pitch, and it didn't take long for Forest to extend their lead. And what I liked about this one is it's a great case of counter-attacking. Ipswich trying to get back in the match straight away, and we'd mentioned how Leif Davis likes to attack down their left-hand side, and Forest absolutely exploited that, because I think it was Aina to Anderson to Elanga, and then Elanga absolutely exploited the space that Davis had left behind, and Jacob Greaves as left centre half had absolutely no answer. He was completely floundering, wasn't he?
Yeah, he bamboozled them. And Elanga's 2 goals, they reminded me very much of 2 goals he's already scored this season. So this one, think about that Brentford goal that he scored. He did brilliantly there to get the ball, to drive at the defence with such confidence. And when you've got somebody like Elanga, he looks so confident at the minute. The ball almost sticks to his feet. He's none of that heavy touches that maybe we saw last season. He's in so much control and striding towards goal. I think everyone just thought he'd find a way to get it into the net. He's got a runner in the middle, but he was never going to use them. And it's such a wonderful finish with his left foot. That's something that he's really improved on, his finishing, his output with his left foot, and particularly as a predominantly right winger, getting balls in the way he plays. He doesn't really use his left foot that often. So to have that in his locker, as well as the things that he does on the pitch, is brilliant. And I sort of mentioned about the formation. I really thought Elanga was better off the right, because I think we created 2 early chances through that. Then the goal comes from that. But then you see a few minutes later, he scores one from in the middle of the pitch. So the fact that Nuno is confident to give him the confidence to roam and to do what he likes really shows his importance to the team. And you think back to summer when some fans were a bit unsure about us potentially selling Elanga for 45 million. Marinakis obviously turned that down, and some fans were thinking, hang on a minute, could we have taken that? I think everybody is very happy that Marinakis stood firm there.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. And when you think about the fact that, again, price tags, Elanga and Hudson-Odoi combined cost 18 million. And even though we've obviously paid money for Ramon Sosa, and who's not even getting in the squad, never mind the team, and then Jota, so you add in an extra 25 million, those 2 cost more than Elanga and Hudson-Odoi. And even then, it still comes to less than we sold Brennan Johnson for. So, make of that what you will. With that third goal, Milenković getting the assist. I have no confidence whatsoever that he thought he'd get an assist. I think he was just punting it generally towards Chris Wood, but Wood held off his centre-half quite nicely, and that meant that the ball kind of slipped between. And again, Jacob Greaves got hooked at half-time by Ipswich, but to be honest, I think it could have been any of the Ipswich back 4. It's just that Greaves, because he was maybe more involved in those 2 goals, maybe was the fall guy there. Elanga headed it on for himself, and I had no doubt whatsoever that he was going to finish that. The other thing that is worth pointing out is I mentioned when the first goal went in to the good lady wife her indoors. It's like, I think Forest should be looking to get 3 or 4 in this one, and it transpired that 6 minutes later, yes, we were 3-0 up.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. I think the first goal I sort of just did a little tiny celebration, but the second and the third I was like, yes, because it was just huge to get them 3 goals in such a short period of time. After waiting so long, we sort of really clicked into life. Milenković is an excellent ball. I think if he can't find the ball to his left to Murillo, he often just does that, clips it forward, and that's fine. I mentioned these Forest players, they know their limitations. Milenković doesn't try and miss something. He's not going to try and find a ball into midfield if he can't. It's a hopeful ball, and then Wood does so well to wrestle his man off. I'm surprised the referee didn't give it as a free kick, to be fair. We got onto the referee in the second half, but yeah, that was a shock. And then Elanga, with the pace, with the strength as well to make sure he got the ball. There's obviously 2 defenders and the goalkeeper rushing at him, but like he was for the first goal, he was just in control of that situation. And I know it's not exactly how they linked up, but you think back to that Everton goal that Elanga scored, or Wood. Well, it was Wood actually scored, wasn't it, against the
head tennis goal?
Yeah. But it reminded me of that because, Wood's sort of there grappling with the defenders, Elanga running off that left channel into the middle with a long ball over the top. And, the goals show Forest can score all different goals. They scored a counter-attacking goal, they scored a long ball over the top, and they score from a corner all in the space of 6 minutes. So their adaptability from attack is so brilliant. They can create chances in any way, and that's just so wonderful, so breathtaking. And it was a very entertaining 6 minutes, shall we say.
Yeah, and it meant that Forest went in 3-0 to the good at half-time. There are 3 goals in the second half, but we'll talk about those in just a minute.
The 1865 Match Report.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase of 16 weeks, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Welcome back to the 1865 match report from Forest winning away 4-2 at Ipswich Town. And in the second half, once again, I think Ipswich tried to come out in the second half in those first few minutes to try and bring the game to Forest. But, you know, they might have had a bit more energy and a bit more momentum again. But again, there's no real threat on the goal, was there? I don't think. I can't really think of any moments where Matt Sells had to work at all. Do you?
No, not particularly. I think we have a chance about 10 minutes in the Wood one, don't we? But they don't have anything in terms of goal. As mentioned, I think Forest were always going to slow down. They weren't going to come out and play and attack because they don't have to. You see that so often teams get a decent lead at half time and then just sit on it because what's the point in taking risks? And I think there was a bit of, for me anyway, as I mentioned at the top of the pod, I'm a negative fan. I was thinking back to being 3-0 up at half time against Southampton at home and how that ended.
I was going to ask you about that.
But no, I think especially the way Ipswich gifted us the goals as well in the first half, they were very preventable, particularly the first two, I thought. So that would have really knocked their confidence. You know, they didn't have much in front of goal and then they go to the other end and really give us gifts, if you like. So I think it was always going to be tough for them to come back second half if they didn't get a goal inside the first sort of 5 or 6 minutes. The home crowd were getting on their backs a little bit. So Forest were just comfortable keeping Ipswich at arm's length and they didn't really have the quality to break them down. It's possibly, I mean, obviously we played Ipswich twice before and they've both been very tight games. This was the one where Forest really took the initiative and showed their dominance in their position in the league. Obviously, the goals in the quick succession helped, but I think, yeah, it was about time that Forest dominated Ipswich over a 90 minutes. And obviously they conceded the 2 goals, so it doesn't look as dominant as it was. But in terms of the game, I don't think really, apart from the obvious lingering Forest doubts that you always have, I don't think anybody really thought Forest would lose that. I'll chuck it away.
No. And I think, again, I think that there may be a bit of confidence taken from the fact that when Forest did basically play with their first team in the cup match, that they were in control, even though obviously it ended up going to penalties. With this one, yeah, a couple of things to note. Number one was the little bit of interplay between Anderson and Elanga on the edge of the box ended up with Dominguez on the left-hand side of the box. He suddenly appeared there, putting the ball in for Wood. And I think more than the header in the first half, this is the one where Woody will feel he should have made the keeper work a bit harder or actually really should have put it away. The other one that I liked was a through ball from Morgan, which was just one of those where a little bit of a pass threaded through the eye of a needle. Unfortunately, it's just a tiny bit too heavy for Elanga to run onto. And I'd said to the good lady wife indoors at half time, would you prefer Elanga to get a hat-trick, Morgan to score a goal, or Murillo to score a 40-yarder? And she was going, oh, it's a really tricky one. If we happen to choose only one of those, I think she said she'd have wanted Morgan to score a goal to celebrate the chants of England's number 10 that were coming from the away fans.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I asked at halftime as well was, if we get a penalty, will Chris Wood let Elanga take it? My distinct answer was no, I didn't think he would. And that's what you want as a striker, to be fair. Yeah, I think Morgan was just so hungry to prove himself. Not that he has to prove himself to the Forest fans, but to the world, because I think he's been the biggest omission of the squad. It's been widely known, and he was just so determined to have impact. And I think actually, in that position, the ball through to Elanga, I was thinking he'd shoot. You know, he was only edge of the box, wasn't he? He wasn't far out. I was thinking, right your foot round it. It's in a favourable position, stick it top corner. But he was so thirsty to get everything right. Obviously, in the more deeper role as the formation dictates, I think he plays it so well. I was always a bit worried, particularly Anderson and Gibbs-White. Is there the strength in there to sort of have a hold in midfield? Is there the awareness of ball positioning and players positioning? But he's really excelled in that. He gets on the ball. I think the only thing I looked at his stats, and he didn't really have that great ball retention or sort of the pass accuracy rating, but he just controls Forest. He controls a game. There were several
moments where he won the ball back, really competitive style. And this is, I mean, we're not here to talk about England, and we'll talk about it probably more in Friday 5 next week. But I think this is one of the things that makes it even more mystifying is that he's not just a number 10. So Eze's been chosen, and I like Eze a lot. Foden's been chosen. Foden's obviously very talented, even though he's not in good form. You wouldn't see Eze or Foden doing those kinds of things. You wouldn't trust them playing as a number 8. Whereas Morgan can play as a 10, he can play as an 8, he can play on the wing, although I don't think we'd choose to play him there. So he can offer a whole lot more. So anyway, I say we're not here to talk about that.
Can I just have one more?
You still want to? Go on.
Sorry. I mean, obviously, it's his 12th goal involvement this season, 11 in 15 games. And to me, it seems quite out for international football. He doesn't shy away from the spotlight. He relishes being the main man, and his commitment is never in doubt. And I just know that him in that England shirt, he'd work so hard for it once he's in the squad. And particularly because I've got tickets for both games for England, I was really hoping for a Forest player in there. So that was my special annoyance at that.
Yeah, I mean, I think just to round that off, at the end when all the away fans were singing England's number 10 and he turned around and kind of shrugged his shoulders, that says it all, doesn't it? It's mystifying to the entire country, the fact that pundits and fans up and down the land are kind of saying, how is he not in there when he is the fulcrum of a team who are in the Champions League spots? Absolutely astonishing. Anyway, so going back to the match, Forest made some substitutions. So Yatesy and Morato came on. We reverted to the kind of the 5-4-1 type formation. It feels like a little while since we've seen that, but of course it's something that's a kind of a tried and trusted method. How did you feel about those subs?
No, I wasn't a huge fan, to be fair. I didn't mind the Dominguez for Yates change. I think it became the pantomime villain, hadn't he? Because the referee
yes,
somehow booked him.
And it's one of those as well where he's almost determined to talk himself into trouble.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, I have not seen it. I've not seen replays of it. But to me, it looked the referee booked him for getting a slide tackle, winning the ball and getting trod on. So I don't know how the referee managed to book him for that. And then obviously he kept going down injured. And then when he gets subbed, the applause the home fans are. I absolutely loved that from Dominguez. So I didn't mind that change for Yates. But I really didn't see the need for the back five. I see it quite a lot as to why we've done it, but we were in control, and Ipswich were having a semi-decent spell at that point, but that was because the referee gave them absolutely everything. For about 10 minutes, the referee gave them absolutely everything, so they get getting free kicks and corners, and I see, get Morato on, he's taller and he can help in that sense, but I just thought once we bypass this moment, that they're not doing anything special. So I was a bit... Obviously, I just wanted that fourth goal for a bit of reassurance. And as the game went on, there was less time for Ipswich to get any more goals. But yeah, I thought maybe he'd gone too early. But, who am I to criticise Nuno this season? I think our success comes down to him entirely. So if he felt that was right, then I'll back him that it was the right decision.
And then the second round of subs saw Jota come on for Hudson-Odoi and Taiwo come on for Chris Wood. And of course, not long after that's when we actually conceded a goal. It was one where the approach play by Ipswich and by Kayuste is a player I like quite a lot, actually, and he's only on loan there, so presumably he's going to be not playing for Ipswich next season. But his movement and his turn and pirouettes to get the shot in was good, so you could argue he deserved the goal for that. But what you can't see at first glance is that it did take a fairly hefty deflection off Murillo's thigh, I think, which probably took it out of the reach of Matt Sells.
Yeah, I've not actually seen that, to be fair. I must have been, when I watched Match of the Day, I must not have been looking at that. But I was thinking, I thought Sells sort of looked a bit small, but maybe that's because he goes one way and then has to quickly readjust. So, yeah, it was a real annoyance. I think everybody was just annoyed because we're all rooting for Matt Sells to go far in the Golden Golden Glove race. And I think clean sheets are the essence of success. So we had such a desire for that clean sheet. It was an annoyance to concede one and to give them space at the edge of the box to do that. But there was a bit of nerves at that point. But I think Forest they scored, 2 or 3 minutes later. So They just got back going, got back into their momentum and thought, let's finish the job off. So, a bit annoying to concede that. But the ground was already empty by that point anyway.
Yeah, so obviously at 3-1, Ipswich kind of think, can we get back into this Southampton style? And of course, they got caught on the break. They committed men forward, and it meant that the two wide players, Gibbs-White, making a break, was fed through from inside his own half. They were 2-on-1 with the defender. And Gibbs-White fed Jota, who first time shot into the bottom corner, and Forest were 4-1 up. And then, of course, they managed to concede another one. And actually, I have to say, I'm more annoyed by the last goal that we conceded, because when you have got a big back five on, the fact that George Hurst, who scored against us at the City Ground in the FA Cup when he was unmarked, was being marked by Jota, who's probably the smallest player on the pitch.
Yeah, and to be fair, Jota isn't the worst header of the ball, is he? And I remember it was in front of us. We played the long ball forward, and Jota jumped with their central defender and won the header. And the defenders just looked at him like, how is he there? So Jota is reasonably good in the air, but there's no chance he should be marking somebody like Hurst. And a ball in like that into the box with the back three as they were, they should have gobbled that up, really. So that was, like you say, the first goal was quite fortunate from them, but the second one was a real sickener as well, especially to concede so deep into the game. I mean, it was virtually the last kick of the game, wasn't it? And 4-1 sounds pretty dominant, 4-2 sounds like you've had a game, whereas Forest didn't really have a game. But on their fourth goal, where does it come from? It comes from Ryan Yates, of course. It was off the bench. His impact is just brilliant. He wins the ball back, knocks it forward. Then is it Elanga or Hudson-Odoi dithering? He gets there first, hammers it forward for Gibbs-White, and then obviously Gibbs-White and Jota do the rest. So it's just brilliant to have that depth to come off the bench and be so ready. And I'm so glad that Yates' presence, his influence is still being felt, because he's my favourite player. I love him, and I just love everything about having somebody from the city or from Lincoln, but a Forest fan at the heart of everything that we do correctly.
I know for you, he is number 1, number 2, number 3, etc. Anyway, right, let's hear from what Nuno had to say after the match, talking on Match of the Day.
Nuno, congratulations. Another excellent performance, and that 6-minute spell in the first half when you scored 3 times, that really summed up the strength of your team today.
Yeah, we got this moment right. We got Ipswich unbalanced, and we took advantage of it.
And of course, what he went on to say was that, he wasn't too, publicly at least, he wasn't too concerned about the concession of the 2 goals. I suspect he'll probably have a word with his defenders to just kind of, and the midfielders, of course, to make sure that those balls aren't coming in. We're not kind of losing that. The defensive solidity is going to still be important in the run-in. He had good words for Anthony Elanga, and I think one of the things that he talked about was not just Elanga's presence and his movement in those positions and the fact he can trust him in several different positions, but also talking about the fact that he always works hard for the team, even when he's not always getting his rewards. So I think it's only fair to finish off by mentioning our Swedish mercurial winger. One of the things that I particularly like about Elanga, and I also like it about Ola Aina, is you mentioned about, they're playing off the right and they're predominantly right-footed, but both of them are equally as comfortable using either foot. Those kinds of things are important, and we should celebrate them.
Yeah, absolutely. And those two really show the positive character in the squad, because I think they've both gone through their rough patches this season. There was a path in sort of November where we really struggled to get the best out of both Hudson-Odoi and Elanga. They both had a very dry spell. But then after the Man United game, I think there's only been 3 games that one of them hasn't had a goal involvement. So we've really found a way to get them involved, to get their confidence up. Aina had a rough patch, around Newcastle, Fulham, but he's bounced back. And, it just shows that Forest, everybody's bought into it, and everybody doesn't get too down with the lows, doesn't get too high with the highs. They're just on a consistent level. And to have somebody with the confidence of Elanga on that right side, with the end product of Hudson-Odoi on the left, and then the depth of Jota and Sousa, who, as we mentioned in the break when we were chatting, wasn't even in the matchday squad, just shows how far Forest have came the first 2 years, particularly the first year in the Premier League. They were lopsided. They had one winger at the whole club. It was Brennan Johnson, who really had to spearhead our survival hope, whereas now we've got options everywhere, all over the pitch. And winning against Ipswich, I think, was quite important, because it signified, as you mentioned briefly, the change is sort of the last quarter of the season. We've just gone through that third quarter of very tough games. And we've now got this run of games where we've played teams we've pretty much beat, apart from Chelsea. I think it was vital that we backed up Man City. We'd beaten Ipswich. We did so with reasonable ease. We did so with so much quality. And it's a brilliant way to start those last 10 games.
And just to finish off, George, a little stat that I heard yesterday. So the last time Forest scored 4 goals away from home was in the Cup against Blackburn. I think it must have been the Carabao Cup. And 2 goals scored by Jesse Lingard. That feels like a long time ago now, doesn't it, George?
Oh, wow, yeah. It was the first game after the World Cup, wasn't it? And it was a cold Wednesday in Blackpool. Blackburn, wow.
So I'm just going to finish off by saying a big thank you to George. Thank you, of course, to the Reds for keeping us going, and let's hope this good form continues. And of course, thank you, listener, for joining us. Now, as we're recording this, the Forest women will be kicking off in their match against Derby County. We'd hoped to bring you a women's show last week, but apologies for the fact that we couldn't. We will be bringing you one this week to talk about their position, hopefully cementing their status at the top of the league in today's local derby. And then we will bring you the Friday Five as usual with your news roundup, and I'm sure we'll probably end up having a bit of a rant about the England situation as part of that one. So thank you very much for listening. Keep tuned into 1865, all of our links, socials, podcast links and so on at 1865.football. Come on, you Reds.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.